it's a real pleasure to see all the people who have turned out today. This is vastly different from what 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, when I called on Mr. Sisk at the hospital to see if they'd be willing to share a piece of property for us to use for our resident sculpture. He was very nice and very receptive, and he consulted with his board and all the legal ramifications that occurred. But I never dreamed that it would work out the way that it did for the benefit of the entire community. Because what we have seen, not just a resident sculptor having a place to sculpt and the privacy in which to prove his genius, but also to offer a bypass for people who go to and from Coosa Valley Medical Center, people who are suffering, and they come in and talk to Krager, they look at the situation there, they know the story of Ann Sullivan and Helen Keller, and they feel enjoined and happy about the prospect. So in that sense, we not only had a site for a person to come and feel rewarded, but also that the spiritual essence of the statues, and when you look at what all has happened, you go back to Giuseppe Moretti, who did the head of Christ. It now is in the archives and history, and he carried that with him throughout. And that was a piece of marble from this quarry. He was in Birmingham, and he saw a Bible made out of marble on this man's desk, and he insisted on coming to Silicaga to look at this. And when he saw it, he said, "This is comparable to the Carrara marble, which I'm familiar in my country of Italy." And so he carried with the head of Christ with him, and he carved it. And of course, we all know about the Vulcan, and it won first place at the World's Fair in St. Louis in 1902. But what we don't remember is that he also won first place for the sculpture of the head of Christ, because he carried that and won first place. He carried it with him wherever he went. And so one thing that I learned is that all good sculptors see the spiritual aspect of the piece of stone that they're carving. In other words, the stone speaks to them. And I think it's just wonderful that we can go from the head of Christ with Moretti to come into the full circle with Krager and the Helen Keller and Ann Sullivan piece. And it would not have been possible had not Glenn and his group made that possible. They've been wonderful. It's been a wonderful location. I know that at some point in the future we may have to move, but I've decided that the promise I made we would be out within 2 weeks after he needed it. I've changed that to 2 years. and the reason is that it's been so good for Silicaga that people come in here, can go down on the corner there of Morton Avenue, the entrance of the hospital. They can do whatever they want to do, or park in the middle of the street, which they frequently do, and they go over and talk to Krager, which they frequently do. And one thing that happened there is that, according to Krager's records, is that we have something like people from 34 different states who have stopped by to look at that particular operation. Now, that reminds me of a sculptor that we had here earlier in the history of the city, C.P. Falcone, who came to this country in 1916. I was in New York for a year or two, and then he came down here because of the quarry. And he set up a sculpting shop here in Silicaga. It's called the Silicaga Marble Clock Company. And his goal in life was to ship a piece of furniture. He made dressers, he made tabletops, he made clocks, he made vanities. He wanted to ship a piece of marble to every state in the Union. And according to his granddaughter, that's exactly what he did. So Glenn, I want to reverse that. I want to make sure that we have people from all 50 states to visit the campus of Coosa Valley Medical Center, and they see the wonderful sculpting site we have on the corner. Without you, that would not have been possible. Without the people that you have working with you, it would not have been as pleasurable. So from the bottom of our hearts and from the standpoint of we couldn't have done it without you, thank you very much.